Recording now. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us tonight, and Barb is ready to go. Barb, take it away.
Hey, thank you for joining us. We're going to open with a review of our current federal income tax code. Then we're going to move into a different way for Americans to pay their federal taxes. It's not progressing. A little glitch here, Larry.
Okay, click on your slide.
There you go. Okay.
From now on, it'll click on with the button.
Okay. Yeah. The current federal income tax system, we know that it's very complex. It's costly in time and money and very time-consuming for all of us. We know it's very unfair because it doesn't affect all Americans in the same way. It's corrupt because we're hearing an awful lot about IRS scandals in the news today. We sure have a loss of privacy with it, and all of us, whether we do it ourselves or have taxes done by the professionals, we either pay too much or too little. So let's take a look. For complexity, look, we have over 74,000 pages and it's still growing. I found a quotation from David Camp.
Barb?
He is the chairman.
Barb?
Yeah, and then we'll move into a different way for Americans to pay their federal taxes. The current federal income tax system, let's hear some things about it. Complex? You bet. It's very costly and time-consuming. Is it unfair? Well, are all Americans treated the same? It's corrupt. We're hearing so much more in the media about IRS scandals. Loss of privacy. Do you really want the federal government to know more about you and your financial situation than you want to even share with your children? And even though you hire someone to do your taxes, it's very possible with the complicated code that you're either going to pay too much or too little. Currently, there are over 74,000 pages, and the code is still growing. As a matter of fact, David Camp, who is the current chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, has said that there have been so many changes to the tax code over the past decade that it is now 10 times the size of the Bible, but with none of the good news. What's the cost of complying with the income tax code? $500 billion to $1 trillion a year. That's what it costs businesses in actual expenses to comply and with trying to figure out how to comply. And so many business decisions are based purely on the tax code instead of trying to grow the business and create more jobs. And that is causing, our income tax code is causing some jobs to leave the United States. And there is no way we can compete globally because of the cost of compliance. Is our current tax unfair? Well, let's put it this way. The more you earn, the higher the tax rate you pay. And the code is filled with all kinds of exceptions and loopholes. And it discourages hard work and savings. With respect to hard work and earning, we have such a tax system that there are, in the year 2013, forms to fill out 7 different tax rates. The first set of tax rates from 0 to about $18,000 of taxable income, you would be taxed at 10%. But for the next chunk of money you earn, from $18,000 to about $73,000, suddenly your tax rate on your taxable income is now 15%, and it climbs higher as you make more money. So it surely does discourage hard work. And what about saving? If we're paying attention to the news today, we're seriously seeing that middle-income class workers are having a difficult time just keeping their heads above water and paying their bills and taking care of their family. So forget saving for that particular group. But what about the wealthy? How about if we find out that they have ways to legally look at the tax code so that they're going to be able to decrease the amount of tax that they would owe. And at the worst, they would be putting their money overseas where they would not have to pay tax on their income. Let's talk a little bit about corruption. Congress members and lobbyists, they have this wonderful relationship whereby lobbyists who represent companies, corporations, approach the congressional members, and they ask for certain kinds of special items to be put into the tax code. So, if the Congress member says, yes, indeed, then the lobbyist manages to somehow find some extra dollars to put into the congressional member's re-election campaign coffer. The IRS workers, we're learning now that a number of them, while they're checking income tax returns from citizens, some of those workers themselves are not paying income taxes. We know that there's an abuse of IRS power over taxpayers. You understand if you've ever had an audit. When audited, it's the taxpayer's responsibility to bring all the total proof and bear the brunt of stress and cost to try to prove that the tax return was done correctly. Also, lately, the IRS has been accused of targeting groups that were applying for 501c3s or 4s on a political basis. And this is the one that I found out lately. We have a horrible scandal. $500 billion was paid out fraudulently over the last 5 years. It could have been due to clerical error, not enough IRS workers, but folks, fraud as well. And that $500 billion, that's our tax money. We taxpayers bear the brunt of it. As for the loss of privacy, if you've ever filled out your own 1040s, you know that you have to share your Social Security number, your family status, who's in your family, what are their Social Security numbers, how much income did you earn, and from what sources. All of your personal financial records have to be entered on that form. You've got to detail all of your expenses if you're using the Schedule A itemized deductions. Business expenses, volunteer expenses, deductions, what kind of stocks do you have, how much money did you make. All of that complexity really does encourage cheating. We think we have a better way. H.R. 25 in the House and S-122 in the Senate, the bill named the FairTax. What is the FairTax? Simply a national consumption tax on all new goods and services. When is it paid? At the point of retail sale, when you buy something for your personal use. The FairTax does abolish the IRS by defunding it, and it also abolishes and eliminates the federal income tax code. There is companion legislation that repeals the 16th Amendment because we know we don't want both tax systems to be in place. The current sponsor and co-sponsor numbers are impressive. In the House, 76, in the Senate, 9 as of this date. A total of 85, which is the most supported tax bill ever in the House Ways and Means Committee. To let you know something about where the FairTax came from, who developed it, we had 3 Texas businessmen who were so distraught over the fact that at every one of their board of directors meetings, 80% of the time they spent was trying to make their businesses comply with the income tax code. And that is so wrong. So they took it upon themselves to say, we need to have a different tax system come about. They managed to get $22 million over the years from private donors. Not a single politician was involved. And then this money was used to interview professional economics experts, professors from very prestigious universities and their staffs and other economists around the country. And the specific goal for that group that was finally selected was come up with a different way to pay taxes so that the federal government would still receive the same amount of revenue, and yet it would be fair and visible and have all the other good qualities about it. They resulted in a 131-page FairTax bill. It is small enough for you to seek it out, download the PDF file, and actually read it for yourself. As of now, we have at least 80, if not more, respected economists who have written and shown support for the fair tax as true tax reform. Just to remind you about all the kinds of federal taxes on income that will go away. We're no longer going to have income tax on personal individual monies, any capital gains, no estate tax, which means businesses that have built up over time are finally going to be able to pass the business along to their heirs without any taxation problems. For those of you who still get paychecks, you'll be delighted to know that there is no payroll withholding. You earn that money, it is yours. There will be no income tax involved with self-employment, no alternative minimum tax. Those of you who receive pensions and or Social Security benefits, you'll no longer have to declare and pay any income tax on them. And corporations will no longer have to be filing any kind of income tax. Gone will also be every single compliance cost because of the tax code. Conclusion, no tax on any income whatsoever, which begs the question, how will the government make or get their money? Through the 23% national sales tax rate, which is applied on only new goods and services. And it goes to reason that the more we consume, the more taxes we pay. And that, folks, is by our choice. It's a good thing to understand what our current retail pricing system is all about. For some of you, this may be a wide-eyed opening revelation. It is a fact that all the cost of businesses for complying with the current tax code is going to be passed on to the consumer within the price of the product or service. That amounts, that embedded tax, to an average of 22% in every retail good and service that is purchased today. What does this mean? That it means that you are actually paying income taxes and a hidden embedded federal sales tax of sorts right now. Here's an example. If you take a car from the beginning stages to the very end when it's put out for sale, you've got mining of the ore. Companies are involved in that process. They have a cost for compliance for the tax code. Then you move the ore to the foundry, more companies involved, and more tax ramifications passed into the price tag. And then it moves to creating parts for the cars through the sub-assembly of the vehicle, the final assembly, and then the car is in the sales showroom. Folks, along all of those ways are companies, and all of their costs for compliance are embedded in the price tag. Now, what's going to happen when the fair tax is implemented with respect to pricing? If you look at the column on the left, it's 4 blocks high. The top block is called embedded tax costs. Well, when the fair tax is implemented, all of those embedded tax costs for complying with the current code, gone. So you'll notice that top block with the upward arrow is removed from that column. And then on the top of that column is placed instead the fair tax. so that we believe prices are going to remain relatively the same. But I wanted you to understand that we are replacing the removed embedded tax costs. Is the fair tax easy? You bet. There's absolutely no record keeping and no forms of any kind to fill out. No more of those forms that you see on the screen. Here's another wonderful thing about the fair tax. It is visible. Your receipts are going to show how much fair tax you paid. Here's an example. It's very easy these days to purchase a coffee maker with the high price of $100. But with the fair tax, this is what your receipt is going to show. One line will be $77 for the product, which is the cost for manufacturing plus the profit desired. And then here comes a specific line, $23, showing the fair tax that you paid. Is the fair tax fair? You bet, because finally everyone is going to pay taxes. There's not going to be any more underground economy to get away with not paying taxes. There's no more black market. Right now, there is approximately a $2 trillion underground economy of income. Not a single penny of tax has been paid. That will be something in the past, because with the fair tax, all of those underground people are certainly going to be spenders, consumers, hence pay the fair tax. This also includes all the illegal immigrants who will be consumers and out-of-country tourists. That's a big one for the state of Florida as well. We know we have 50 to 60 million tourists visiting us during the year, and all of those people will pay the fair tax. Remember, used goods are excluded. And here's a very important new fact. There will be no fair tax when something is purchased for business. Quick example. Say you own a copy shop and you buy paper in order to print flyers for your customer who ordered those flyers. You are not going to be responsible to pay the fair tax on that material for your business. What happens to Social Security and Medicare? Well, those two programs are in deep trouble today. As a matter of fact, for Social Security, it's 2 workers today who supply the benefits for one current living Social Security recipient, and that can't continue. But the fair tax protects Social Security and Medicare. How? By the fact that there are more contributors. Everyone is going to be paying the fair tax, and of that 23%, 8% is totally dedicated and protected by law to supply Social Security and Medicare. But wait, there's more. How about a monthly check from the government? And it's going to cover the fair tax that you paid on the necessities of life, because the fair tax believes that each person has to take care of his family first before starting to supply the federal government with tax money. And you know that some of the bills for your necessities of life are utilities, gas, food, clothing, medicine, and so on. Now, that monthly check, it's only going to be available for Americans residing in the United States with valid Social Security numbers. We call that monthly check a prebate. It is based on how big your family is and what the current poverty level is. Here's a chart that shows you what would your life be like with respect to the prebate in this year if the fair tax was in place. Let's take a look at the single adult household and the line in lavender. If the family size is 1, that means you as a single person, the government, that would be the Department of Health and Human Services, calculates every year the amount of money a person would have to spend in order to take care of the basic necessities. We call that the poverty level. Well, this year, it's $11,670. The fair tax is in that particular spending amount. So it's going to be prebated back to that person with a monthly prebate check of $224. Let's take one second last example. How about a 2-adult household and 2 children? So that would be the green line on the right half of the screen. The government has calculated that that family size would require $31,460 to spend just to take care of the bare necessities. Within that, so much fair tax was paid, and it's going to be monthly prebated back to the tune of $603. This is how the prebate works. Now, how does the prebate affect the tax rate? Because it is true that when we are buying something at the cash register, we all pay that 23% rate. But because the prebate makes the tax rate progressive, if a person spends just up to the poverty level, the effective tax rate for you personally is 0%. If you happen to be a person who spends at twice your family's allotted poverty level, then your effective tax rate is 11.5%, and on and on. And you'd have to spend over $14 million a year to reach the tax rate of 23%. If you're wondering how the fair tax is collected, it's a simple hierarchy. The states are going to collect the fair tax from businesses, and at this time we have 45 states that currently do collect sales tax. The other 5 may either institute such a situation or they can hire out neighboring states to do the job. This is so much easier to take care of. Instead of having 120+ million tax returns to consider, now there will only be 18 million business tax returns. And there is only one state sales tax form to file. And for the effort of collecting and sending to the proper authorities, both the states and the retailers will get 1/4 of 1% for that collection and sending in. Here's a chart that shows it. The fair tax is paid by consumers at the bottom of the screen at the retail level. So then, going up one step, the retailers and businesses collect that fair tax. The next step up, they move it over to the state sales tax authority. The retailers, businesses each collect 1/4% for doing that. And likewise, the state sales tax, the state will be collecting all of the business taxes, forward it, and move it up to the Federal Sales Tax Bureau, at which point the state will collect 1/4 of 1%, and that will certainly add a lot to the state's coffers. What are the benefits for you and for business? Well, here we go. We have $11 to $14 trillion overseas, and they are both personal and corporate assets. Once the fair tax comes into play, that money can be repatriated. And I believe we all know that when money comes back, that is working capital. We are going to become the corporate headquarters. We're going to have other foreign companies come here and have their world headquarters. We're going to have the corporate tax rate best in the whole world. Currently, our corporate tax rate is the highest in the world, which is 39%. Now, under the fair tax, the corporate tax rate will be 0. Yes, we will be a haven. And what does that mean when capital comes flowing in and corporate headquarters and more manufacturing plants are built? Jobs, great paying jobs. More benefits for business. We're going to have, as individuals, more money to spend. That will make a stronger economy. Businesses will be much more productive. They're going to be able to actually invest in new equipment and machines, and they will need to hire new employees because their business is going to really grow. and more about the fair tax in our economy. You will, remember, keep all of your earnings. Economic growth and job creation will be so off the chart. The number of jobs will greatly increase, and real wages will increase as well. The gross domestic product is research showing to grow by 10.5% in the first year, and the capital stock, in terms of the stock market, high growth. Output will also grow, and the 8% growth for real wage growth. And here is a very important part. It concerns foreign trade. Right now, when we export any product in the United States, it carries along with it that embedded tax. There is no way today that we can compete fairly. However, once the fair tax is in place, when we take a product and export it, it does not have the fair tax on it. Example, if there is a widget with a $10,000 price tag now in this country with the fair tax, and then it's going to be shipped overseas, from that $10,000, the 23% fair tax is removed, the item ships at $7,700. How much more competitive we are going to be globally. Much more competitive. And other companies, U.S. companies overseas, may just decide it's time to come back home. With respect to imports, we are also going to be at a great advantage. And here's why. When a product in a foreign company gets ready to be imported into the U.S., yes, its government removes some of the value-added tax, but there are still some taxes built into that product. So when the foreign widget gets imported into the United States and then is sold, the fair tax will be added at the point of sale. Will our product be much more price-wise competitive? You bet. And domestic production has to increase greatly. And so we think the fair tax is truly the solution because it will help this current economic situation of such slow growth. It will create economic growth, jobs, wealth, and when I say equality to all classes, will all be treated the same. If you want to know more, you could go to the official website, www.fairtax.org. What does that site offer you? When you go to it, it's the national organization, Americans for Fair Taxation. You can find local groups, meeting information, frequently asked questions, because it seems that people new to the fair tax seem to have the same 50 questions, and so you will find an easy, simple explanation either by text or video format. There are wonderful, easy-to-read white papers on different topics specific to issues and demographics like agriculture. And be sure to sign up for the Fair Tax Friday newsletters. You'll get so many wonderful updates. Find this book. Might even be in your public library. Read it. It's simple to read. And here is a list of websites that you can have for further information. Notice, please, that we not only have fairtax.org, but we have FL for Florida Fair Tax. We also have Facebook now. FairTax Nation is a good one in the mid-central states. PopFox is a good one to directly tell your congressman your opinion on something. And the bottom one, fairtax.us, tries to get businesses who are in favor of the fair tax to get to know each other and grow a more powerful base. And that's it. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you, Barb. Very well. Okay, we'll take some questions. We've got a couple of them on the board here. And as soon as we get those finished, then Barb will come back and do the special topics. And I don't see any raised hands, so nobody's got voice that they want to add tonight. All right, John has asked he's asked a philosophical question here.
Oh,
With the end of the Obama era coming and the likelihood that adults will once again run the government, does the fair tax have a high place on their priority list? John, I don't know how to answer that question other than to say we don't know. We do know that many of the congressional representatives have signed on as co-sponsors and therefore we believe truly support the fair tax. But we don't know who our candidates are going to be for the U.S. Senate and for Congress, the House of Representatives. We don't know what their positions are on a national basis. We do know locally. For example, if you're in Timbuktu and you've got a seat for Congress being challenged by somebody else and there's going to be a primary, it would be up to you and the people, the supporters in your district, to determine if either of those candidates are fair tax supporters. And if not, then you've got a difficult choice to make when it comes to going to the voting booth in the primary. But it's at the primary level where it's most important that we be active and solicit candidates who would be good, not just supporters, but advocates of the fair tax. Sorry, I don't have a better answer than that, John, but that's the way it is. The next one is from, just disappeared on me, from Robert, and he is asking, does the prebate level depend on the area that one lives in? Seems like the basic necessities would cost more in San Francisco versus Charleston, West Virginia. Well, you're exactly right about that, but no, the prebate does not change, as does not the established poverty levels each year that the Department of Health and Human Services publishes. So across the United States, the lower 48, there is no difference. There is a difference if you happen to live in Alaska or in Hawaii. But as far as the continental United States, Department of, the thresholds for poverty levels are the same across the nation, and that 23% is calculated on the same number. Thanks for that question, Robert. Yes, sir.
Larry?
Yeah.
May I speak?
Quick.
Okay, here's what I was thinking as well. Even though New York City specifically, would be a higher cost in order to cover basic necessities, the incomes for those people, I would think, is significantly higher than perhaps income for people down here in Florida. With that being the case, there is much more disposable income and ways for creating more wealth. So the rebate is a nice factor or feature, but it doesn't speak to treatment of how well you can position your life by the extra wealth potential up in those northeastern states.
Now that's true, Barb. Thanks very much. And what something that what Barb's comment registered with me is that, you know, people who are working under the fair tax will be taking home a paycheck without any federal tax deductions. Because people in San Francisco or New York, as Barb had pointed out, as opposed to somebody in West Virginia, because they have the higher income to start with, the increase in dollars that they will be taking home, because there are no income taxes being withheld and no Social Security or Medicare taxes being withheld, will be greater, because those percentages are taken on greater numbers. Thanks, Barb.
Oh, Larry, one more thing, too.
I got to take the next question, Barb.
Okay.
Okay, what mechanism will be used? This is from Kiefer. What mechanism will be used to prohibit a black market? What will it cost and how will it be paid for? The black market, Kiefer, will actually be a lot less than it is today under the fair tax. I mean, under the income tax, I'm sorry. Because the income tax is very, very easy to cheat on it. It only takes you, when you either fill out your own personal income tax return, or when you provide the detail information to a tax preparer. You can leave off information or you can inflate information. You can make any changes you want. The tax preparer will just take the numbers you provide and do your tax return. So it only takes one of you to cheat. Under the FairTax, it takes two people to cheat. It takes you and the salesperson, whoever that might be. 85% of all of the revenue will be coming from the big box stores that we know of today. That would be your Walmarts, your Home Depots and such, Sears stores. And those stores are not going to risk losing their license in the state in order to give anyone a break on the tax. So the bottom line on that is that we see a lot less in the way of a black market. What there would be, you're always going to find people who are going to find some way to skirt around the system, but they are a drop in the bucket and insignificant dollar-wise as far as the revenue to the government goes. Thanks, Keith, a good question. Next one is from David, and he is saying, what all proponents of fixing the tax code don't seem to take into account is that most of those 3 million lines of code were put there by a legislator as a kickback to some constituent group. It's basically a logbook of congressional bribery. Dave Bryan, this was a quote of a Dave Bryan comment in response to Dave Camp's op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. So if you understand what that quote said, that all of the code is all of the additional code that's in this code and the compliance regulations today is the result of some benefit that a congressperson provided to some special interest group. Thanks, Dave. Okay. Next would be another David. I received a comment from my senator which states that the Department of Treasury shows that the FairTax will either add to our current deficit or require the sales tax to be levied at prohibitive levels. Any response I can send back to her? Yeah, but I can't say it on the air, David.
Larry?
That senator is referring to a report, an op-ed that was produced, and I can't remember the person, Dave Bartlett produced an op-ed 4 or 5 years ago slamming this FairTax and coming up with all this off-the-wall stuff. If they are referring to those comments, you ought to refer them to the counter arguments to what Dave Bartlett was reporting. That is totally invalid, what your senator has been informed of, and I really don't believe that they got it from the Department of the Treasury, but it is possible that the person at the Department of the Treasury that she spoke to was referring to the Dave Bartlett report. And if you would like, I can send you a copy of both Dave Bartlett op-ed as well as the response from the FairTax people. In reality, according to the research that was done, the FairTax effectively lowers the total tax liability over the lifetime of every income tax level from 0% to the maximum today of 39%. The lowest income people get the best benefit from the FairTax. The highest income people get the least benefit, but they get a benefit just the same. And it's primarily because there are so many more people that are going to be paying into the system, and the system is so much broader based. David, like I said, if you send me an email to repeal_16@earthlink.net, I'll send you copies of that particular, those two reports. Let's see who's next here. Bob is asking or saying, will there still be a state sales tax under the FairTax? The answer to that is a simple yes. The FairTax is designed only to replace the federal income taxes, has nothing to do with anything the states are doing. other than those states that have a income tax will no longer have tax returns, federal tax returns, with which to base their income tax reporting on, and they will have to do something to modify how they collect taxes. It is envisioned that most states will ultimately convert to the same process that the FairTax is, tax everything without any loopholes or exemptions, and provide a prebate for those people who are, for everyone, but primarily so that those people who are living at the lower income levels are not paying taxes on the essentials of life. Thanks, Bob. And here's another one from the same Bob. What will the effect be on utilities such as multiple taxes paid on the telephone, etc.? Services will be taxed, and the multiple taxes that are paid by the telephone, if they're federal taxes and they're part of the income tax code, they will no longer be collected. If it's a federal tax, which is a special assessment outside of the income tax code, or an excise tax, which is outside of the income tax code, those will still be collected. Once again, however, don't forget that in addition to the prebate, which you'll be receiving, Bob, you will be taking home a paycheck without any federal income tax or Social Security and Medicare taxes withheld. No federal withholdings from your paycheck. So you'll receive an increase in pay somewhere in the area of 20, 25, 30%, depending on what your tax bracket is now. And Bob, I know you had another question, a second question on that first one, and I missed it. I'm sorry. If you want to re-enter that one, I'll look at it when it comes up. Last question before we go on to the special topic is from Randy, and he is asking, with all of the corruption in Congress, do you think that the congressmen that are corrupt will vote for the fair tax? $100,000 at what the establishment Republicans did in Mississippi. I'm not sure, 100K at what the establishment Republicans did in Mississippi. Oh, I see. The establishment put in a lot of money so that the incumbent could get more advertising and therefore sway the vote. You know, that's a battle that we are going to have to face. We know for a fact that generally Congress and the lobbyists which they work with are our biggest opposition. The co-sponsors that we have to date are co-sponsors because the constituents in their districts got a high enough number of supporters for the fair tax that they could change the outcome of a vote in a primary election. And if the incumbent does not have that position, it doesn't matter what the lobbyists are offering because they're not going to be there to be able to collect on it. So yeah, we've got a problem there. And Barb, I'll pick up a second. We do have a problem there. Don't know if we can eliminate all of that, but we do know that we can eliminate the corruption on the revenue side, the tax collection side. We are not addressing the spending side. That is another issue. Yes, Barb?
Just to let the gentleman know that research has shown it takes simply 3,000 advocates, voters, who will in each congressional district continue to keep contact with their particular representative. That's enough to change a vote. And this was given to us by Cindy Canavero from our national organization. So there is a way to put pressure on. Difficult job? Yes. But we are paying attention to the newly elected people in this last cycle. Jim Bridenstine from Oklahoma, for example, the strong fair tax advocate. And he's finding that when he opens up a seminar or an event to have people experience a tax forum, he had to actually open up his venue from a small room for 200 to a large arena to hold over 2,600 people. So people are beginning to clamor, and that's what it's going to take to pressure.
Good. Thank you, Barb. That's good information, too. All right. We'll let Barb go and do the special topic, and then after the special topic, we'll pick up the questions that are remaining, and we'll go from there. Barb?
All right, thank you. And the special topic being how you can help. And here's how you can help. The best thing that Americans can do is spread the word, and we call that marketing the fair tax. It's still a surprise and a minor disappointment as to how many Americans have yet not heard about it. But we just keep plodding along. The more the merrier, and we will make it happen. We've got to market the fair tax. Let your local government, your state and federal representatives know we're serious about wanting the fair tax. And as Larry suggested as well, support those candidates who do support the fair tax. Here are some very easy and effective things you can do. Get your cell phone or your house phone and put your House representative and senator's phone numbers right into your contact list. Why? Because you will call them. And you will simply tell their staff, because that's who answers the phone, tell your staff that you want that representative to co-sponsor the fair tax bill. Give it its number too, H.R. 25S122. And then what? You've got to call them again. Squeaky wheel gets the grease. Call every week. That shouldn't take more than 10 minutes of your time, and it would mean so much. If those representatives happen to be co-sponsors of the bill, please thank them for doing so, because they're getting some pressure from the negative side. So it's good for them to know we're still behind them. We still want the fair tax. And I like this from Larry. Larry used to say, and if your representative is not co-sponsoring the fair tax, you ask them why they really like the income tax of the IRS. More easy ways to help. We like this one. It's simple. You record a message on your answering service. It could be something like this. If you'd like to see the IRS disappear from the face of the earth, you might be a FairTax fan. Check out fairtax.org. Here's another one. We all have groups in our email list. Give them a short message. Write something like, if you'd like to get rid of the IRS and keep all your earnings, go to fairtax.org to learn about how. Bring attention to the fair tax. Be sure to wear a fair tax button, maybe a shirt with a fair tax logo, or even a fair tax hat. When you're seen and the fair tax is brought to their attention, this is what it could look like. The best dressed volunteers, we know how to do it up when we go to events. Do you happen to get unsolicited junk mail? Well, we suggest that you put some fair tax information into that envelope and mail it back. We have things called fair tax pocket cards. Here's a sample of the front and back of the card. It has the basic information on it and some website that you can contact. What do you do with that? You take that card and you put it into that pre-addressed envelope and mail it back. You can also write letters to the editor. You could either write it with comments or you could write it with questions, because maybe you don't feel as though you could say enough about the fair tax as kind of a newbie to it. Well, then whatever question you have on your mind, write that letter with questions. And be sure to watch for responses. You can get a nice dialogue going back and forth. And call your local leader for some assistance on that. Here's a good one. Please talk to business owners. Who would they be? Well, if you have services done to perhaps your house or your business, see if they're going to be willing to put some fair tax information on their countertops. In several states, not just in Florida, many billboards are going up. Ask if someone is interested in having one. We deliver. Hey, are you short on time? Then maybe donations would be the way you can help, because the donations certainly go into the volunteer. It's an all-volunteer organization, so we donate and then use that money to produce materials to help spread the fair tax. Here's an example of one of our signs. It's a 4-foot by 8-foot mini billboard. And Nick happened to catch the picture at just the right time. there was a larger, huge billboard, and the poor company just didn't have any business. In desperation, they put their own sign up. God, give me a sign. We couldn't resist this opportunity. Perhaps we took that and made a Christmas card out of it and sent that to our representatives. Just keep the FairTax in front of them. More ways to help? Well, nationally, when you go to that fairtax.org site, as I mentioned earlier, you will find local groups and you will get plenty of updates. Your FairTax Friday newsletters. And if you listen to certain TV and radio programs, you will notice that some of the hosts are absolutely either supporting the fair tax or they're saying things like, hey, what about the fair tax? Should we have that? So it's good that they are raising the fair tax issue. On a statewide level, every state does have its own particular website. You can always see if you can get a group together and a speaker would come and make a presentation. In the state of Florida, it was hard work, but a small number of people, including Mr. Mark Gupton, did manage to get, along with our senator, a fair tax memorial passed. And it said that the state of Florida legislature is in support of the fair tax. And then it was certified and sent up to Congress, the President, House Speaker, and President of the Senate. It at least shows that there's some powerful state behind looking at the fair tax. The mini billboards, you saw an example of it. And Larry mentioned earlier at the beginning about the mobile command unit. It's very easy to get some basic material, and at any event that might be in your neighborhood, set up a fair tax booth. And here's a picture of the mobile command unit, which we like to take around and exhibit it because we need to get the word out. And we'd like to give credit. The volunteer list of easy things to do to help spread the fair tax was created largely by Nick Rudlick, the Florida Co-Congressional District Director, and we appreciate everything he's done. So please, folks, something on that list was easy enough to do. We'd appreciate your getting involved. More websites for you to take a look at and copy as you will. Thank you so much.
Good deal. Thank you very much, Barb. That gives us a few minutes before 9 o'clock. We have time to get into the questions, and if necessary, we'll go overtime a little bit, but we'll try to address everything.
All right.
I've got another one from Bob here, and Bob is asking, what about federal tax on gasoline, or is this a special excise tax not affected by the fair tax? The gasoline tax that we have is an excise tax. The fair tax will be applied to the purchase of gasoline. So you would on the surface think that the price of gasoline is going to skyrocket. However, because the embedded taxes and compliance costs of getting that gasoline from the ground to the pump to your car goes away, you will not see the kind of an increase that you might be anticipating. Will there be some increase? Yes, there will. We believe retail prices will go up somewhat, maybe 10% or so, but everybody will be taking home greater than 10% in their paycheck without any federal deductions. Thank you, Bob. And here's another Bob. We'll take this one real quick. I'm retired. Me too, Bob. I'm sorry. What savings will there be for me under the fair tax since I don't work anymore? Well, the first thing is, of course, you will have no tax on anything you're purchasing up to the poverty level for your family size. Now, if you're single, Barb mentioned what that number was, and I think that said you'll get $224 a month. That reimburses you for the taxes that you will be paying at the register when you buy the essentials for your life. If your income and your spending is less than the poverty level for a single person, then the prebate will provide plus dollars for you because you will still get the same amount, the same $224. If you're spending, as Barb mentioned, twice that, your total tax would only be 11.5%. However, here's something else. Under the FairTax, pensions that you have saved for, potentially with pre-tax dollars while you were working, under the impression that when you take distributions at retirement, you would pay the income tax on them then, will not be taxed. No form of income is taxed. So your pension plans that you take distributions on will not have a tax on them. You'll get the full dollar. And if your income was high enough where you were also being taxed on your Social Security, your Social Security will no longer be taxed because there is no tax on any form of income. I hope that answers your question. Barb, you have anything to add to that?
I was thinking about how I'm not joking. I was saying to Nick, I can hardly wait for the fair tax to pass because then I think I'm a great person to do a Walmart greeter's job. I don't mind taking a small part-time job because then it's all my money. And as we move toward the fair tax, we're going to, oh, by the way, the use products are something also that more seniors without working time involved have a chance to go out and shop. And so there's also, in conclusion, if Bob would be willing to go to the fairtax.org site, he could click on the paper that says fair tax and good for seniors. So it would address his concerns specifically.
Thanks, Barb. Good point, especially about the used items. Used items are not taxed. Okay, Randy, I have written my congressman many times, Gosser, Flake, and McCain, and they don't seem to want to reply to me, but I will keep trying. I understand that Senator Flake is a co-sponsor. I don't have my list of co-sponsors in front of me, so I can't answer that. But you're doing the best you can with that, Randy, and I certainly applaud that effort. As far as Gosser goes, you just need to get enough people contacting him where he has to make a decision. Does he want to continue denying the benefits of the fair tax, or does he want to lose his seat? Our power as individuals and as a nation is in our vote. And if we don't make the efforts to unify that vote and get the power of the unification, we're going to be stuck with whatever they throw on us, and there's nothing we can do about that. So you're doing the right thing. McCain is a flake. I guess Flake is the name of a congressman, but McCain is a flake also. And both of those guys need to be replaced. Replacing a state senator, a U.S. senator from a particular state is a little more difficult job than replacing the congressperson in your district, but it is doable. And there are people I think that'll help in getting this done. Thanks, Randy. David is saying, so far, Congress is resisting allowing states to collect sales taxes on internet sales. Will Amazon, Walmart, and other online companies support or oppose the fair tax? I don't have an answer for that, David. I don't know if they will support it or oppose it. But I believe if they take a look at the numbers and determine exactly how much more money they will have to deal with when they no longer have to deal with the federal income tax system and the bookkeeping and accounting that goes in order to comply with it, they will probably think that it is a pretty good idea. I'm getting tongue-tied here. And that's my guess, David. I don't have a real concrete answer for you on that one.
And Larry?
Yes, sir, ma'am.
The issue today is that when we're talking, or the Congress is talking about beginning to tax internet sales, they're doing it still in the context of living under the income tax code. So what you said earlier works, and that is we've got to treat everyone fairly. How fair is it for a mom and pop small furniture store here to pay for the setup to sell their furniture, whereas it's less expensive on the internet? So there's that moral issue to deal with as well.
Certainly. Also, I think what Congress is addressing is the states having the ability to tax internet sales, not the federal government. Okay, this is from Kiefer. Is there a way to get a copy of this recording? Yes, Kiefer, there is. If you will send me an email so that I have your address, I will put a copy of the recording in my Dropbox and send you a link which will allow you to download it and bypass the file size requirements that our email suppliers have on us. Donald is asking, maybe a magnetic sign to stick to our cars and trucks. Very true, Donald, and we do have magnetic signs available. I don't know if we have the large ones anymore, but many people that I know of have gone out and found a local supplier to do the magnetic signs and bought 100 or something like that to get a lower cost on them, and then resold them and got their money back and then a couple of bucks for their trouble. So that's what I would suggest. As far as the small signs go, I know we've got them in Florida, and I believe Florida's warehouse is available nationally. If you will go to, send me an email and I'll tell you the site to go to. I know our Florida website is having a little bit of trouble right now, and so if you go there, you won't get into what you want and what I'm trying to direct you to. But we'll get you taken care of there. Just send me a message. And you're very welcome, Kiefer. Barb, do you have any closing comments?
Actually, Nick is here, and he's asking if anyone in the area of Florida knows anything about a parade or an event, especially getting close to the Labor Day time, to please give us, contact you, Larry, and you can give us a message, because we're just chomping at the bit to continue moving the FairTax bus around the state. So we'd appreciate some assistance on that end.
Very good. Thank you very much. And I will also add that Nick and Barb are now warehousing the 4x8 mini billboards. And so if you are in Florida and you would like a mini billboard or 2 or 3 or whatever, they will deliver them to you in the command center. Am I correct on that?
Yes, you are.
Okay, then. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We've had a great evening. You had some good questions, and I'm expecting some emails so I can get some answers back to you.